Hello friends, wish you all a very happy Independence Day. Independence according to me is spreading knowledge, to educate our citizens, to uplift all the backward class people or underprivileged children who are devoid of education, who are not getting sufficient amount of funding to even buy uh, preliminary books. So if you are educated, if you have enough knowledge and you think that you are able to spread your knowledge to someone who needs it, then you need to do. This is what independence means to me. And education gives you freedom, education gives you right to speak, education gives you the opportunity to speak, to keep your thoughts in front of someone who is you know um, full of wisdom. So this Independence Day, just take a pledge that whatsoever you learn from your teachers, from your seniors, from your books, from your school, from your education life, always try to spread your knowledge, your informations to those people who are seeking for these things. It's very important. Our country is a backward country. It's developing, but there is few sections which are still not known to get sufficient amount of books. That portion of people are uneducated. They want education, so just think about them. And this is what independence means to me, and I hope this means to you all as well. So with this, let's start our today's video. So it's about ground tissue system. I have already described the epidermal tissue system, and the second type of tissue system is the ground tissue system. So ground tissue system is found in stems in the form of solid cylinder. So the structure of ground tissue system is basically cylindrical, and it is found in stems. Found in between epidermis, vascular cylinder is called cortex. So found in between epidermis and vascular cylinder, and it is known as cortex. So the ground tissue's position is basically in between epidermis and vascular cylinder, and it is known as cortex. The ground tissue system forms the bulk of the plant. So apart from all the three types of tissue systems, ground tissue system is basically forming the bulk of plant system or the plant tissue system. So the first category under ground tissue system is cortex. The ground tissue system present below the epidermis surrounding the central cylinder, and it is delimited from the cylinder by endodermis, is called cortex. So it is basically present below the epidermis, which is surrounding the central cylinder, and it is not fully attached to this cylindrical portion of the vascular bundle, but it is basically separated from it by means of endodermis, and this is known as cortex. It has thin-walled parenchyma cells with sufficient amount of intercellular spaces. So there are many intercellular spaces, and the cells are parenchymatous. It has starch, tannins, crystals, and other common secretions in them. May have collenchyma, sclerenchyma, and sclerites in addition. So these are some additional things which are found in cortex. Sometimes prior to cortex, collenchymatous hypodermis is present. So hypodermis is present after epidermis and before the cortex originates, and it is not necessarily found in every plant tissue, but sometimes it is present, and it is collenchymatous in nature. The innermost layer of cortex is known as endodermis, and endodermis is a uh, single layered tissue which is commonly known as starch sheath because it is full of starch grains. So it is commonly known as starch sheath. So the innermost layer of cortex is known as endodermis, which is also known as starch sheath, and it is a single layered tissue. So cortex is a protective tissue, and it stores water, food, and sometimes carry out carbon assimilation. Now the second category under ground tissue system is endodermis. Endodermis is a single layered tissue which separates cortex from stele. So stele is the central portion of the vascular cylinder which is associated with the neighboring tissues and the associated tissues as well. So I am not discussing about stele right now. The cells are barrel shaped without intercellular spaces, and the cells are living. So in endodermis, the cells are barrel shaped without intercellular spaces and they are living. Have tannin, starch, mucilage and nuclei. And therefore, due to the presence of starch, endodermis is also known as starch sheath. Inconspicuous in stems. It means in stems, endodermis is not very prominent, but it is conspicuous or prominent in case of roots, and it is circular in nature. The orientation of endodermis in case of roots is circular. It is a type of accessory inner epidermis. Accessory means helping some important functions. So it is an accessory inner epidermis, maintaining the root pressure and stops diffusion of air into vessels. So these are two important functions related to endodermis. It is a storage tissue. So basically endodermis helps in storage functions. Now comes the next portion, which is pericycle. It is present in between the vascular bundles and endodermis. It is multi-layered in case of dicot stems. Thin cylindrical structure surrounding the vascular bundle and pith. So it is a thin cylindrical structure which is surrounding the vascular bundle and the pith. It may be sclerenchymatous as in Cucurbitaceae. For example, this is a family. For example, one of the common members of this family is cucumber, or both parenchymatous and sclerenchymatous as in case of Compositae, for example sunflower. Distinct in roots but absent in case of roots of parasitic and aquatic plants. So pericycle is very prominent in case of roots, but it is commonly absent in case of parasitic and aquatic plants root. Following functions are there. Becomes meristromatic in some dicot roots and form vascular cambium and phallogen. So pericycle in case of dicot roots become meristromatic to give rise to secondary tissues, to give rise to secondary growth, forming vascular cambium and phallogen. Forms lateral roots. Adventitious roots develop in stems from pericycle, and it is also a storage tissue. Now the other category under ground tissue system is pith. It is also known as medulla, forming the central region of the stem and root. It is large and parenchymatous in case of dicot stems. It has intercellular spaces as well. It is small or absent in case of monocot roots. So if you have seen any diagram in your books, then you must have noticed a very prominent region in between the ground tissue system, it is the central portion, not very prominent in its structure, but it is a central portion, and it is very very prominent in case of dicot stems, but it is absent in dicot roots. So pith is not very very well developed in case of dicot roots, but it is very very well developed in dicot stems. So this is a differentiating feature about dicot stem and dicot root. By observing the position of pith, the not structure, but actually the diameter up to which it is spreading itself, or it is how much area it is occupying in the ground tissue system. From that you can get an idea whether the given specimen is a dicot stem or a monocot root, because monocot roots have no pith or very small pith, but in case of dicot stem, pith is very very prominent. So pith is parenchymatous, and many a times pith gives rise to parenchymatous extensions, which are commonly known as rays from the central portion of pith or the central point of the pith. Pith is also known as medulla, and these extensions are known as medullary rays or pith rays. Pith originates from the ground meristem. Now there are some important functions associated with pith. It is a storage organ or storage tissue because it is parenchymatous, but if it is sclerenchymatous, then it gives mechanical support. So depending upon its cellular nature, the type of cells it is having, its function will vary. If it is parenchymatous, then it is a storage tissue, but if it is a sclerenchymatous tissue, it will give mechanical support. Medullary rays, which are parenchymatous, serve as channels for food transport, minerals and water from pith, which is towards the central portion, to the cortex, which is towards the periphery of the stem. So medullary rays are needed for transporting food, minerals, water from pith, that is from the center, to the cortex towards the periphery of the stem. In dicot stem, some of the parenchymatous cells of medullary rays become meristematic and form interfascicular cambium. So this is important. In dicot stem, these medullary rays become meristematic, giving rise to interfascicular cambium. So in my next video, I will give you a diagrammatic representation of ground tissue system, and also will start discussing about the final type of tissue system, which is vascular tissue system. Thank you.